Good morning, students. So let's start today's session. Last week, that is last class on Tuesday, we studied about the respiratory system. Today, we are going to study another important system of human body, which is the skeletal system. All right. So I will be sharing my screen now, and I request you all to pin yourself onto KitUKate Laboratory, where it is written presentation. Is my screen visible to everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, miss.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Do.
ma'am.
Okay. All right. So before we start understanding the skeletal system in detail, I want you all to tell me why is it important? Why is skeletal system important? What is the function of our skeletal system?
Ma'am.
Is it because without our bones, without the skeletal system, there'll be no support in our body.
You won't be able to walk.
We won't be able to walk,
Okay.
and we'll be like just like a blob. Let me say.
Exactly. So it
Be
gives
a
you a
blob, which is why.
framework.
We wouldn't
It
have
gives you a
structure.
frame. Yes, it gives you a structure and frame. Anything else? There's one more very important role that the skeletal system plays.
Ma'am.
Am I
Ma'am, it
audible?
gives.
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
You're
Walk.
audible. What
Ma'am,
did
it
you
gives
say?
structure.
Yeah, it is a structure. It gives a frame. It gives
It's also,
it
ma'am.
gives you the ability to
You can't.
walk.
Yeah.
Ma'am, it protects the organs.
Absolutely, it protects all your vital organs. All those important organs of your body are protected by the skeletal system. Correct. Anything else that you all can think of? Any facts that you want to share about the skeletal system that you might have read across?
Like I
Ma'am, I
heard
have it.
that the
I have it. I have one.
One by
The
one,
human
please.
body,
One by one.
ma'am, the
ma'am, I
human
have
body,
one.
Okay.
ma'am, the human body consists of 26 bones. The
26? No,
skeleton,
it's 206, right?
206.
206.
Yeah, 206 bones. Okay.
Ma'am,
Yeah.
Ma'am, I also
the
have,
the
I have
bones
one more.
have this. The bones have a sponge-like substance inside of them, but it's hard, like a hard
What is
sponge
it
inside
called?
of them.
Ma'am, you
What
think,
is it called?
It's called the
ma'am,
bone marrow. It's called the bone marrow.
Okay.
ma'am,
What is
may
the
I tell you
function of the
something?
bone marrow?
Ma'am, there
Is
have,
it to produce red blood cells?
Absolutely. It is to produce the red blood cells. Okay. Next fact.
ma'am, I have one.
Yeah.
The skeletal system provides support, protection, and mineral storage via 206 bones. They are held together in a dense connective tissue called ligaments.
Okay. All right. So,
I have another one. When
Here
you're
is one.
when you're like a baby, mainly your bones are something called cartilage, which is a rubbery material. So
okay.
those fuse together to form bones, and that's how you.
Well, I mean, you still do have cartilage even as an adult.
Even as an adult, you have
Yes,
cartilages.
as an adult, you also have cartilage, but you had more cartilage when you were a child, a baby.
Okay. All right. So now we move
I'm not
ahead.
sure if that's the case. I think just babies' bones are softer than most. Or are they actually more cartilage?
Ved, your voice is too low, Ved.
Oh, okay. Now it's
You're not
clear.
clearly audible.
Can you guys hear me?
Not very well. It's quite low. The volume is quite low.
God. Okay, here we go. People should hear me now. I
Oh,
basically
yeah,
have
it's
to.
better. It's better. All right. So we will be studying lot more facts, and we will understand the skeletal system in detail. during the class today. All right. So, one second. I think someone else joined in. Let me just let them in. Okay. I think I should be able to see my screen from here. If I pin onto, no, I will not be able to. All right. So there are two main, like when I'm going to explain the skeletal system, it's going to be in two parts. One is understanding the human skeleton, and second is learning about few important skeletal joints. Okay. So first, let's take a look at the skeleton as a whole. So we all the bones. So we spoke about many of these things, right? It gives strength and rigidity to our body. There are 206 bones, and what are the main functions? Production of blood, for support, for protection, for movement. All right, and for it also gives us some minerals, and it also helps in our endocrine regulation, hormonal regulation. Okay, so these are some facts or functions that we discussed just before we started. So let's move on. All right, so this is a major view or the major parts of the human skeleton. So if you see, you have a skull, you have these collarbones, which are in science called as clavicle. You have scapula, which is known as the shoulder bones, which are which are behind your on your back, just under your shoulder, the triangular bones. Then you have the ribs, the rib cage. You have the vertebra, which is at the back side. Then you have this pelvic girdle, which is right below your abdomen. Then you have the upper arm, that is from the shoulder to the elbow, which is called as humerus. And from elbow to your wrist, you have two bones called as radius and ulna. The same way for the legs, from your hips to your knee, you have one solid bone which is called as femur. And from knee to your ankle, you have two bones which are called as tibia and fibula. Okay, so these are like the big bones which are there in our body. They are all, like, comparatively bigger in size. Okay, so there are other small bones also, but while we are talking about the main bones that we saw, these main bones are divided, the entire system is divided into two types. The first type is called the axial skeletal system, and the second type is called the appendicular skeletal system. Axial skeletal system, as the name says, it forms the axis of our body. All right. So the first picture, you can see my cursor. The first picture, the parts or the bones which are in blue color, they form the axial skeletal system. That is your skull, your vertebral column, and your rib cage. All right. So this is something that gives your body an axis. All right. And the appendicular skeletal system, these are some things or some bones which are attached to your axial system, and they project to both the sides, on the left side as well as on the right side of the axial system. And this appendicular system is always in a symmetry from the axis. The it'll be the same amount which is on the right side will be there on the left side also. So what forms the appendicular system? Majorly your shoulders, your hands, your hips, and your legs. So these form the appendicular skeletal system. So the ones which are marked in pink in the second picture, these bones form the appendicular skeletal system. Is this clear? Is this picture clear?
Yes.
Okay. So in the axial system, where we have the skull, we have the vertebral column, and we have the ribs. Okay. And in the appendicular system, we have the shoulder girdle, which is also known as pectoral girdle. Okay, it is known as pectoral girdle. And we have the hip section, which is called as the pelvic girdle. And then we have the limbs, the hands and the legs. Okay, now let's understand uh, each part of these two skeletal systems. Let's understand. Let's start with the axial system. One second. Okay, let's start with the axial system. Now, the first part is the skull. Now, skull has in all, how many bones? Do you all know how many bones are there in the skull? Does anyone know how many bones are there in the skull?
Trying to remember.
6 to 9.
No, the skull has 22 bones. Okay, so the skull is again divided into two parts. One is the cranium, which is the crown, that is the top of your head. And second part is the facial bones, right? Where you have your jaw bones, your eye sockets, and all of that. So the cranium bones, which is the top part of your head, there are 8 bones, and they are all fixed together. They cannot move. The bones are joined, but they are fixed. They cannot move. They are not a movable joint. Okay. And in the facial bone, there is only one movable joint, which is your lower jaw. No other part of your facial bone can move. It's only your lower jaw which can move. Okay. You can try making faces and you will see that only your lower jaw is moving. Your upper jaw is stationary. It does not move. Okay. So the cranium, the top part of the skull, it has 8 bones, and the facial bones, it is a combination of 14 different bones. Now, of these 14 bones, ossicles, which are towards the inner ear, they are the smallest bones in our body. Okay, so did you understand the skull? So we have the cranium and we
Yeah.
have the facial bones. So there are 8 bones in the cranium and there are 14 bones in the facial joint. Of the entire skull, only the lower jaw is a movable bone. Okay,
Okay.
let's next go to the vertebral column. Now the entire vertebral column runs from the bottom of your brain till the tailbone. Okay, so it starts right below the skull and it goes on. The entire blue line that you see on the back side, here it ends at the tailbone. Now, because we are humans, this vertebral column ends here. But for any other mammal which has a tail, this vertebral column, the bone runs through the tail and it ends at the tail. Okay, because we are evolved from our, we say that the evolution happened from lower mammals, evolution happened from apes and monkeys. That's why we have been evolved in a way that we also have a tailbone, but then it does not extend. It is a smaller bone. Okay, now let's understand the vertebral column. Now in the vertebral column, can you see these joints where my cursor is moving? Can you see these small joints?
Yes.
These small,
Yeah.
so each of
Yes.
this part is called a
Yeah.
vertebra. Okay, so each of these parts, these segments which are there in the column, each of these is called a vertebra. And the vertebral column has 26 sets of vertebra. Okay, there are 26 of them. So the first and the second, which is right under your skull, it's called atlas and axis. The first and the second vertebra, it's called the atlas and the axis, which is supporting your skull and which is letting you move your neck on, 180 degrees. You can move your neck all around, right? You can move from extreme left to extreme right side. So that movement is possible because of these two. And then we have the after first and second, then the next 7, they are called the cervical vertebra. So you might have heard many people have cervical spondylitis. Somewhere in the neck they have pain, or they even wear some kind of a support for their neck. So these vertebrae which run through your neck are called cervical vertebra, and there are 7 of them. So we are done with how many? 2 at the top, then 7 of cervical vertebra. So we are done with 9. Next 12. Next 12 under your neck up till your abdomen. There are 12 of them, and they are called thoracic vertebra. They are called thoracic vertebra. And this thoracic vertebra is where our rib cage is connected. Okay, so the rib cage is connected to the thoracic vertebra. And then we have a few more vertebra, and in the end we have the tailbone. It is called the tail vertebra. Okay, so we saw that there is axis and there is atlas, the first, second, then we have the cervical vertebra, then we have the thoracic vertebra, and in the end we have the tail vertebra. Okay, understood this? Any doubts? You can ask.
I understand.
Okay. Now, next, in the axial system, the third part is the rib cage. Okay. Now, there are 12 pairs of ribs that we have. 12 pairs of them, because one is on this side and one is on the other side. So we always count the ribs by the number of pairs. Okay. So we have 12 of them. So of these 12, now here also there is a counting. The first 7 ribs, starting from here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. The first 7 ribs, they are called as the true ribs, because they are connected directly to the center part, which is called as the sternum, and it is a very important bone, this part. Okay, the sternum. Please follow the cursor. Okay, so this center part of the rib cage is called the sternum, and right behind the sternum we have a heart placed. Okay, so the first 7 pairs of ribs are connected directly to the sternum, and they are called the true ribs. After that, from 8, 9, and 10, these 3, you will observe that they are not directly connected to the sternum, but they are connected to the 7th rib. You can see they are connected to the 7th. They are not. Oh, they are not connected directly to the sternum, but they are connected to the 7th pair of ribs. Okay, so these 3 are called false ribs. And the last 2, which is the 11th and the 12th, these are the flexible ribs. Now the ribs 8, 9, 10, and 11, 12, they offer a flexibility for our lungs to expand. Last time in the respiratory system, we saw that when we inhale, our lungs grow bigger in size. Okay, so that's why we have the last few ribs, the 5 ribs, which offer a flexibility. Otherwise, bones are very stiff, right? They are not flexible as muscles. But because the lungs expand and the lungs are placed inside the rib cage, the lower part of the ribs have been designed in such a way that they offer flexibility for the lungs to expand. Okay, so in all there are 12 pairs. First to 7 are true ribs. 8, 9, 10, because they are not tightly connected to the sternum, they are called as false ribs. And the 11 and 12 are called floating ribs. Okay, they are not connected anywhere. They are just connected to the vertebral column, but nowhere in the front. Okay, understood the axial system completely? The skull, the vertebral column, and the rib cage.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now let's go to the appendicular system. Okay, appendicular system has two main categories. One is the girdle and second is the limbs. Okay, for both pairs of limbs, the forelimbs and the hind limbs, that is the hands and the legs, they are attached to the axial system by a girdle. Now, girdle is this, the shoulder assembly or the hip assembly. Okay, so in the shoulder assembly, we called it as pectoral girdle, where there are two main bones. One is the clavicle, which is your collarbone. You can touch and feel the collarbone under your neck. And the other is the scapula, which is the triangular bone, which is just behind, under your shoulder, on the back side. You can touch and feel the shape. It's triangular in shape. Okay, so these two bones form the pectoral girdle. Okay, now if you observe here, exactly on the portion where my cursor is, there is a small cavity. Now this is the cavity where my limbs, my arms are fixed. Okay, and they are fixed by something called as a ball and socket joint, which we will be studying in the second half of the class today. Okay, so we saw the pectoral girdle. Pec Pectoral girdle has clavicle and scapula, and there is a cavity wherein our hands or our uh, forearm, what do you say, the bones are connected. Okay, now the same way in the pelvic girdle, we have a cavity here where our thigh, the bone, the femur is connected with the same assembly as the shoulder by a ball and socket joint. Okay, now both sets of limbs, whether it is hands or legs, they have similar type of bones. Okay, so from your shoulder until your elbow or your hips until your knees, there is one big piece of bone. For the hands, it is called as humerus, and for the legs, it is called as femur. Okay, and femur, which is your thigh bone, is the largest bone in your body. And then from your elbows to your wrist, or from your knees until your ankle, there are two bones. Okay, so let's understand the hand bones first. So the two bones which are running from the elbow to your wrist, they are called as radius and ulna. ULNA, ulna. Okay, now uh, out of these two, radius is a stronger bone and ulna is a weak bone. Okay, how do you, if you touch and feel your hand, how will you locate which is radius and which is ulna? The bone which is connected to your thumb, the bone which is connected to your thumb is the radius, and the bone which is connected to the little finger is the ulna. Okay, understood the hand, the bone which is connected to the thumb, towards the thumb side, it is called the radius, and towards your little finger up till the elbow, the bone that runs is called the ulna. The same way for the lower limbs, from the knee until the ankle, there are two sets of bones. One is called tibia and the second is called fibula. Now, tibia is the bone, a stronger bone. If you can see in the picture, it is visible that it is stronger and it is a thicker bone. And it is the one which is running towards your big toe. of your legs. And the fibula is a weaker or a thinner bone which is running towards your little toe. Okay, and then comes the wrist. So we have studied the shoulder, we have studied the bone which is there in your forearm, we studied the bones which are running from your elbow to your wrist. Now the forearm and the hand, there were only 3 bones, but in all your complete hand has a set of 30 bones. Okay, so we have just learned about 3 of them. So the remaining bones, where are they? The remaining bones are running from your wrist until the tip of your finger. Your wrist has 8 small pieces of bones. That is why you can rotate your wrist. You make a fist with your hand and you try to rotate your wrist. If it would have been one solid bone, you wouldn't be able to rotate your wrist into 360 degrees. But because it is made up from a combination of many small bones, to be precise, 8 small bones, you're able to rotate your wrist in 360 degrees. Okay. And then we have 5 bones in our palm and 3 bones in each of our fingers, except for thumb. Thumb has 2 bones. Okay, so total comes to 30 for each hand. The same way it is for the legs. So there are 8 bones at your ankle and then the remaining at the foot. So did you understand overall how does it work? How does the human skeletal system look? Did you get a rough idea of it?
Yeah, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am.
Let's move ahead.
Yeah.
So this is what we saw right now. I'll just skip the slide. We'll move ahead. Okay. Now yesterday we had sent one activity sheet to you all, right? Did you all print it?
Yes, ma'am. My printer isn't working, so I threw it out.
You drew it out.
Ma'am.
Okay. So what you
I
have to
printed
do is once after you either print it or you draw it, you have to cut each part and punch using a punch. You can make holes on the organ joint, on the skeleton joints, and tie them using a thread and make an assembly like this. Okay. And once you do that, you can, in the white portion of the skeleton, you can write the name of the bones, at least the major ones like the skull bone, the rib cage, or here, the limb bones, all the names, the pelvic girdle, the pectoral girdle. You write the names.
Miss, I didn't draw the bones separately. I mine, I just completely drew it.
Can you show me? Okay, you drew it that way. So what you can
Yeah.
do is you can, draw arrows from your skeleton and write the
Okay.
names.
Okay.
Okay. Anyone who has printed it out can show me.
Me. Me.
Please show. Excellent. So what you could do is, Gia, make holes and then tie them using a thread and write the name of the bone.
Ma'am,
Okay. Yeah.
I printed it out, but how do we attach it?
Attach them using a thread.
Okay. So we sew it together.
Don't use a stapler because then you'll not be able to move the joint. Use a thread.
So
Ma'am?
we sew
Yeah.
the pieces together.
Ma'am,
Yeah.
I didn't understand.
You did not understand. You did not understand the activity, or you did not understand the skeleton.
I didn't understand.
You do not understand the skeleton?
Yeah.
Okay. So we will revise it once again. Okay. We will
Okay.
just quickly revise it and then we move on to the joints. Okay. Now, this was Vinaya, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Vinaya, did you understand that the skeletal system is divided into two parts? The blue part here and the pink part?
Only do not.
Yeah. So the blue part is something which is at the center of your body, from your head, then your chest, up till your stomach, the back of your stomach. Okay. And the pink part is something which is on both the sides, on the left side as well as on the right side. Like your shoulder, you have two shoulders, right? Left shoulder, right shoulder. You have right hand, left hand. The same way you have two sides on the hips and you have right leg and left leg. So the one which is at the center is called the axial skeletal system, which forms the axis of our body. And the ones which are on both the sides, it is called the appendicular skeletal system. Okay. So the axial skeletal system has three parts: the skull, the backbone, which we call as vertebral column, and the rib cage. And the appendicular skeletal system has the pectoral girdle, that is your shoulders assembly, the hands, the hip assembly, which is also known as the pelvic girdle, and the legs. Okay, those who have, like, what you can do is probably from this picture you all can write the name of the bones onto the activity sheet.
Okay.
Okay, else what I'll do is after the class I'll send it over to you all can just copy it, and once you finish making your skeleton, you all can send me pictures. Okay, Vinaya, did you understand this much?
Yes.
Okay, now Veda, I want you to help Vinaya in understanding that from shoulder till the elbow there is one bone, a very strong bone. Okay, and you can let her touch Vinay. What you can do is probably touch Veda's hand and feel. Okay. And from elbow till your wrist there are two bones. You can see that there's one bone towards your thumb and there's one bone towards your little finger. Okay, so the one towards your thumb is a stronger bone, which is called as the radius, and the one which is towards your little finger is a weaker bone or a thin bone called as the ulna. Okay,
Okay.
then then we will not discuss the names of the bones from your wrist till the fingers because there are many of them. Okay, but what you have to remember is the wrist joint is made up of 8 small bones. Okay, and there are 5. If you make a fist and if you observe the upper side of the fist, you will observe that there are 5 bones which are running through your palm. Okay, you can observe when you count the number of days of month, you use those joints, right? Your knuckle joints. So these knuckle joints are the ones which have a bone connecting from wrist and they are passing through the palms. So there are 5 bones which are there on the palm, starting from wrist till your knuckle joint. And after that, each finger has 3 bones. That's why you can fold your fingers. You can see on the front of your palm there are these lines also. So you can fold your fingers along these lines. Okay, so the same way it is for the legs. From your hips till your knee there is one big bone called as the femur, which is the largest bone in the human body. And from the knee till your ankle, there are two bones, the same as the hands. One is called tibia and the other is called fibula. Now, tibia is a stronger bone which is running from the knee towards your big toe. And fibula is a thin bone. You can see it in the picture. Fibula is a thin bone which is running from the knee towards your little finger. Okay. Vinaya, did you understand it, baby, now?
Yes.
Okay. Now
Ma'am,
let's,
should I start punching holes? Should I get a hole puncher?
yeah, you can do that. You can do it after the class also. That's fine.
Okay, okay, I'll do that
Okay.
later.
So till here, till the structure of the skeleton, is everything clear to everyone?
Yes, miss.
Okay. And did you all understand what you have to do with the activity? If you all have such kind of rivets, a movable rivet, you can use the rivet, else you can simply tie it using a thread. Okay. Don't tie it too
Okay, ma'am.
hard. If you tie it too hard, when you'll try to move the joint, but the page can tear off. Okay. So tie a very loose joint. All right. Now let's
Ma'am,
move. Yeah.
we have to hole punch it and then sew the pieces together.
Yes. So what I'll do is, after the class, this picture I'll send it over to you.
Ma'am,
Yeah.
you were using some metal things to put the thing together.
Yeah. So they are called rivets, and they allow a 360-degree movement after you fix it using the rivet.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on. Now we will be understanding each part or majorly each joint in our system. Okay. Now we already spoke about this. This is the spinal cord. Now you all know there is this part of your lower brain, the hind brain, which is called as medulla oblongata. Okay, this is the part. This is towards the end of your brain, towards your upper neck. Okay, from there, from medulla oblongata, the spinal cord runs through your vertebral column. Now, spinal cord is a very delicate, very, very delicate, it is made up of tissues. It is a very delicate thing. So, the vertebral column, we saw there are so many vertebrae, right? These are the vertebra. This is the vertebral column. Inside the vertebral column, through the center, there is a cavity, there is a canal through which the spinal cord runs. Okay. Now you all might have a question in mind that why the vertebral column or the backbone is made up of so many tiny, tiny bones. Did anyone think of that?
Is it because that if we had one whole bone, we won't be able to bend it easily?
We
If it
won't be able to move easily. Yes. Anything else?
Maybe we'll be able to move around and like bend and do
We'll
all
not be able
that
to bend.
stuff.
If it is one bone, yes, we won't be able to bend down. Anything else?
Ma'am, would our backs be like straight all the time?
Sorry, I couldn't understand. Can you please repeat?
Like, would our backs be straight all the time?
Yes, if it would have been a single bone, our backs would have been straight all the time. We wouldn't have been. It wouldn't have been possible for us to bend down.
Ma'am, I
Some,
can't hear you.
you can't hear me. Others can hear me.
yes,
Yeah.
So probably the one who can't hear me can,
I
disconnect
can
and
hear you.
join back again.
Ma'am, I can hear you perfectly fine.
Okay. All right. So the most important role of having small pieces or segments of bone in the vertebral column is to protect the spine which is running inside it. Okay, because it gives the flexibility for such a soft tissue to run through it. Had it been stiff, and if we would have had kind of a jerk or anything, there would have been higher chances to damage the spine. Now these, because these are so flexible, these are so tiny, even a slightest movement will not reach the spine. It will protect the spine. Okay, that is one reason why we have the vertebral column divided into so many tiny pieces of bones. Okay, and these, or each of these vertebra, they have some kind of a cushioning in between. Okay, which helps them. So when they are moving, you'll have studied in physics that when two things rub with each other, there's friction which is caused, right? So because of friction, for example, if your car is moving on the roads, okay, so the wheels, the tires are continuously rubbing across the road. So after a few years, what happens? Your wheels or your tires become very smooth. They lose their grooves. And that's when you go and change your tire. So there is a wear and tear. There is a damage which is happening because of friction. The same way, if there is no cushion in between the vertebra, there'll be a wear and tear which will happen due to the continuous rubbing of bones against each other. Okay, so that's why there's a soft cushioning which is given. Now this part we already saw, all right, from the thoracic cavity, the cervical, and then the abdominal, and then we have the tailbone. Okay, so this we already learned. Any question in the spine or in the vertebral column? No, everyone understood?
No, ma'am.
Yeah. Ma'am, I understand.
Okay, now let's move ahead. Now these are again some facts. We already did this, right? The smallest bones are the ossicles in your inner ear. Now, the second point, read the second point. Although your bones stop growing when you are around 20, they do constantly rebuild new bone cells, right? It's very important. Otherwise, if someone is has damaged or has a fracture or something, if your body is not making new bones, how will you recover, right? So although the bone size does not grow, but new bone cells are being formed continuously. Now, the red bone marrow produces 5 billion red blood cells every day. Okay, all right. And if your body doesn't have enough calcium, it will take it from your bones and bones will become weaker. That's why people say, right? If you have pain in your legs and hands, you should have more of calcium. It is good for your bones. Okay, so the body will extract. Bone is made up of calcium. So if body needs calcium, it will extract it from the bones. But then eventually your bones will become weak. So you should supply your body with adequate amount of calcium. All right. Now let's move ahead and study the joints in our system. I have lost complete track of what the time is. All right. So,
Excuse me, ma'am.
yeah,
We printed the papers that you sent. Should we do it now or later?
you can do it after the class.
Okay.
Okay. Now tell me, we are already, it's already 10:45. We have done the skeletal system. We are left with the joints. So, anybody has any overlapping class, or we can continue for another 15-20 minutes?
Yeah.
You can continue.
Yeah.
We can continue.
Okay. All right, so let's move on. Now, you saw that the entire skeletal system is made up of many, many bones. Now, there are these joints which are holding the entire assembly together. Okay, so these joints in our skeletal system are again divided into two types. One is fixed joint and the second is movable joint. Fixed joint, like the skull, we saw the skull is a fixed joint. We can't move any bone from our skull. But then the joints in our limbs, our hands and legs, they are all movable joints. Okay, so among the movable joints, there are three main types of joints that we are going to study today.
Miss,
Yeah.
if the skull is called a fixed joint, isn't a joint where something can move? So how is the skull referred to as a joint?
Because
Ma'am, I
I
also
told
have
you,
a question.
right? I told you that in the skull, the entire skull is divided into two segments. One is the cranium, which is the crown portion of your head. If you touch your head or tap your head, you will feel that it is rock solid, right? And the facial bones, which
Yeah, it's
is,
really
which
hard.
are your, yeah,
I'm trying to hit it. It's really hard.
it's really hard. And then you have your facial bones, which form your cheekbone, your chins, your jaws, upper jaw, and the lower jaw. Okay.
Ma'am, what's
Yeah.
the jawbone called?
Sorry.
What's the jawbone called?
The jawbone of what I know is called the jawbone. I don't know the scientific name if there is any, but we can
Mm.
find it out. All right. So the cranium, the crown portion of our skull, that is the top of our head, is made up of 8 pieces of bones. Now look at, imagine the shape. Okay, it's a round shape. Okay,
Jawbone.
and no, the
Ma'am,
head. Yeah.
ma'am, it is called the maxilla and mandible.
Okay, the
Mandible.
mandible and the nebula.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, if it would have been one single piece of bone, it would have, there is no need of a joint. But the skull portion is made up of 8 different bones, and they have to be joined together to give it the desired shape. Okay, so that's why it is a joint. But having a movable joint in the skull, imagine you could damage your brain anytime. As it is, people keep getting fractures in their hands and legs all the time, right? And we cannot afford to have any such thing with our brain. So that's why it is a fixed joint. Okay, so today for now we will study the three important movable joints, which are the ball and socket joint, the pivot joint, and the hinge joint. Let's study each of them. Okay, the first is the ball and socket joint. See this picture here. This is how it keeps moving. It rotates. Try moving your hand 360 degrees. Try rotating it through your shoulder. It moves in the entire 360 degrees, right? The same way it is happening in the picture. So there is a socket, there's an empty cup, there is a ball, and there are two bones which are connected, one to the socket, one to the bone, which is allowing the movement of 360 degrees. Okay, so this is what is there in our shoulder. So this is the first picture is of our shoulder. Can you see this? There is a ball, there is a socket. I told you now, in the shoulder assembly, there is a cavity into which the hand fits. So the fitting, the joint portion is called a ball and socket joint. The same way from your hips to your thigh, the hip bone to your thigh bone, there is a ball and socket joint. You can move your thigh, move your legs, you can move your hands through your shoulders. The hand can rotate complete 360 degrees. And if you are flexible enough, you will be able to move your leg also, completely parallel to the ground on the front and back both. Okay, so this is the functioning of ball and socket joint. Because of the shape and the structure, this is called a ball and a socket joint. Okay, so there are two sets of ball and socket joints, two at the shoulders and two at the hips. See how it is connected. The humerus, which is your upper arm bone, is connected to the shoulder through a ball and socket joint. The femur, which is your thigh bone, is connected to the hip bone through a ball and socket joint. Did you all understand this ball and socket joint? Are you trying to move your hands and legs?
Yeah.
Yes. Did you understand this? So it's
Yeah.
a 360-degree movement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Now let's move to the next movable joint, which is called the pivot joint. Okay. Now remember, do you remember that I told you the first and the second vertebra, which is right under your skull, is called atlas and axis. Okay. So this is on which your skull is resting. This is on which your skull is resting. And try moving your neck. You'll be able to see back on the right side, and you'll be able to see completely back on your left side. Okay, so it's like it's giving a rotational movement. You're able to rotate your neck on all the sides. So this bone is a cylindrical bone. See the shape? This bone is a cylindrical bone, and it moves inside the a ring kind of an assembly. And this kind of a joint is called pivot joint. You can see the movement here. There's a ring kind of a thing and the bone which is running through the center of the ring, giving it a, the moment you rotate your neck, this kind of action is taking place, which is, giving the flexibility to move your neck in all the directions. Okay, so this is called the pivot joint. Understood this?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So the pivot joint, where is it present? So he has unmuted themselves.
Neck.
Yeah, so it's in the neck, and it's also there in the forearm. Okay. Okay. Now let's move to the next joint, which is called the hinge joint. For the hinge joint, your elbow or your elbow can move only 90 degrees. It cannot move more than 90 degrees. Same with your knee. You can, while you're standing straight, you can bend your knee backwards, right? You cannot bend it in the front. So this assembly, this mechanism is similar to your doors in your house, okay? It opens only on one side. It does not open on both the sides if it is a wooden door. Okay? So this kind of an assembly is a back and forth movement, and it is called the hinge joint. Can you see how it is moving? Now imagine this is your forearm from shoulder to elbow, and elbow is a hinge joint, and this is how your hand is moving up and down. Okay, so this is your hinge joint. Now, where all hinge joints are present? Hinge joints are present in your elbow and your knees. Okay. Any doubts in ball and socket, pivot, or hinge joint?
No, miss.
No, ma'am.
Okay. Let's move ahead. What do we have now?
Ma'am,
Yeah.
what joint is there in the jaw?
Uh,
What type of joint?
the jaw joint, I'll have to check that. I truly don't know. The name of the joint, I don't know. The joint by which your lower jaw is connected to your skull. Yeah. There's only one joint there, but I really don't know the name. I'll have to find that out. Okay. Okay. Now we have fixed joints which we saw, which are there in your skull. Okay. So these are the fixed joints in your skull. Please mute yourself. Okay. So these are the fixed joints in the skull. Then we have fixed joints in our the gums inside are like in the jaw. Okay, and then we have some fixed joints which are there at the junction of your legs and the ankle. Okay, so these are fixed joints, and these do not help us in movement at all. Okay, all right. So the three joints that we studied was pivot joint, which is a ring and a cylindrical rod assembly. Then we studied the hinge joints, which are there in the elbow and the knee, which move just like the door. They offer a 90-degree movement. And then we have the ball and socket joint, which offer a 360-degree movement, which is there at the hips and at the shoulders. Okay, so these are the movable joints in the human skeleton. Now, again, some facts. We just got to know we knew that 206 bones in the adult body, but the babies almost have 300 bones. Okay, and okay, now
Is it because the bones they form the 300 bones form into 206 bones? Does that mean eventually fuse?
yeah, so it means that eventually as you grow up, the bones fuse to make out of from 300 they reduce to 206 is in number, which means some of the bones fuse together to form a bigger bone. Okay,
Okay.
and as I told you, in the vertebral column, between each vertebra we have a cushioning. That cushioning is called a cartilage disc. Okay, this cartilage disc helps them from preventing from rubbing against each other. So they are like shock absorbers which are there in the car, and they provide the cushioning. And yeah, so we studied about the spine. So let's just move ahead. Okay. All right. The spine is not made up of one, two, or three bones, but it is made up of 33 bones. We just saw that, and it is called as the vertebra. And the vital organs, which are the heart, lungs, and liver, they are protected by the rib cage. The brain is protected by the skull. The smallest bone are found in the ears, and the longest bone is the femur, which is the thigh bone. Okay. All right. So now this is one activity which I'm going to send this table onto you on the WhatsApp. What you'll have to do is draw this table on a notebook, on your KitUKit lab journal. If you have, you can draw this table, and you have to do this as an activity after the class. Observe the movement of each and every part which is given here. So observe the movement of your neck. Does it rotate completely 360, or is it less than 360? Does it bend? Does it lift up, or it does not move at all? So you'll have to write this for each and every joint. Okay, so I'll be sharing this table with you all. You all can draw it out and write down, perform it and note down your observations here. Okay. All right. So this is, I won't tell you this. We will be, yeah.
What's the longest bone in the human body?
Sorry.
What's the longest bone in the human body? I didn't get to see it on the thing.
What is the lung? What? The longest bone. It's called the femur. I'll show you the name.
Okay.
The longest bone is called the femur, which is the thigh bone.
And the smallest bone is the stapes.
Stapes, yeah, which is in your inner ear. Okay. All right. So we have completed today's session here. Now you all can ask me if you have any doubts. And after the class, I'll be sending out these two activities. You all can perform the activity. I'll also send you the name of the bones which you'll have to write on the skeleton print that you have taken. Okay. So you all can ask me any questions if you have.
Ma'am,
Yeah.
the female is red, right?
Sorry. It's
The
not
female
audible.
is red.